In my world that I grew up in, there was no such thing as I can't. My dad, you would never tell him you can't do anything because he would always go, yes, you can do it, yes, you can. You just try, keep trying. If you can't do it this time, you'll do it the next time. And it was no barriers because I had a brother and a sister and we were all equal.
Did you notice in society around you different expectations of you and societal norms based on gender or race when you were young, or did your family protect you or try to instill a different value?
Well, to give you a little bit of background, my mother was one of 15. My father was one of 5. So we had 20 immediate relatives, and plus everybody had a spouse, and that was 20 more. And you were obedient because if you did something incorrect that was not expected of you, you had to answer to somebody and maybe 10 or 15 other people. So you learn very early. And I have to say, they were very encouraging. My mother's mother was a teacher. My father's mother was a teacher. My father's father was a carpenter. My mother's father was a carpenter. They both built a church in our community. And I know my grandfather built the school that we went to. So there was high expectation all the time. So, and it was never a barrier. I didn't find out about racism until we moved to Maryland.
So if we are going forward into your life and fast forward to when you became a business owner. So you are the owner of Dressing by Virginia. When did you begin to sew, and when did you decide to start your business?
Well, I learned to sew when I was in the 7th grade. As a little girl, I always loved dolls. And I used to love to make doll clothes. My mother would sew, and so she had a scrap box, and I was always in it, making things for my doll, and I'd sew them by hand. And when I got to what they called in my day junior high school, well, we took a sewing class, and they let us use the sewing machines, and we had to make potholders, and we had to sew on paper. And we would, they had circles, they had squares, and my teacher told me I was using up too much paper because it was fun to make all the turns. And then we had to make a potholder. Well, while the class was making one potholder, I'd make 20 of them because it was more fun than barrel monkeys. I fell in love with sewing, and that's all I ever wanted to do was to be a dressmaker. And matter of fact, the high school I went to was a technical high school, vocational technical high school, and there was only 2 in Maryland, in the state of Maryland. And that's where I wanted to go. And I think when my life changed was when I was leaving middle school and applying for high school. We had a counselor that came in one day, and she was writing down the schools we want to go to. And after talking to 3 or 4 kids, she says, I'm not even going to ask you what schools you want to go to. I'm just going to assign you to school. Most of you are going to drop out, and the girls will probably end up pregnant. And she left the room. And I was so angry and that she did that. And at the end of the school year and all summer, I worked on what I was going to do and how I was going to get out of the school that she sent me to. So I went to the school and I asked to speak to the counselor, and they told me that she would meet with all the students. I should wait till she called. So she called me, and I went in and I told her, I said, I didn't want to come here. I don't want to be here. I told her where I wanted to go, Carver Vocational Technical High School. And she said, I tell you what you should do. Take your mother, go over to the high school, and talk to the principal. And so that's what I did. That was on a Friday, and I went Monday morning. And when we got there, and we told them what we wanted, and they said, well, you have to see a counselor. And I was like, no, no. She said I should see the principal. I am here to see the principal. And so I went in, and we talked to the principal, and we were going back and forth. He was giving me options, and I kept saying, no, I don't, that's not it. I don't want that. So finally he said, wait a minute, just wait a minute. So he called my school that I was going to, and he asked one question. And he said, what is her attendance like? And when he said that, I was like, I'm in. Because I had not perfect attendance, but from first grade to high school, no, from fifth grade to high school, I'd missed 2 days out of school. And he told me, I'm going to let you come, I'm going to put you on probation. And I said, fine. So he never called me back. So I saw him in the hallway one day, and I was like, am I still on probation or what? So he took me up to the front office and pulled my record, and he's like, Johnson, get out of here. Grades like this, get out of here. And that's how I got into the dressmaking program, and I loved it. I was really in love.
So when did you decide to start your business?
Well, I used to work for the FBI, and my husband was an FBI agent, and we were expecting our first child. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to have any leave because whatever the child needs, I will have to be there. I would have to take this child to all her appointments. If the child gets sick, I'm the one that's going to have to stay home because we lived in Montgomery County and I didn't have any family or close friends there. So I decided it would be best for me to stay home. So we had the baby, little girl, and I stayed home. And about 2 weeks after staying home, I was about to lose my mind. I was like, this child is not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. So I was thinking I had to find something to do. And when I graduated from high school and I wanted to be a dressmaker and I got this job, it lasted 2 weeks. I didn't sew for 5 years after that. I hated that job. I cried going to work and leaving work. So after I had the baby and after 2 weeks, I was like, I got to find something else to do. So I started to sew. I started to make things, and I would make outfits and then go out to lunch with my sister or my cousin. And then we moved to Carroll County, and from Montgomery County, that was a big change. So I used to go to the fabric store and talk to the lady there all the time, and she said, well, do you take in sewing? I said, no, but I could. So she said, well, people come in asking for names all the time. So I gave her my name, and people started to call. And one morning I woke up and I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm in business. I just didn't realize I was in business, so I have to treat this like a business. So luckily my neighbor was an accountant, and I called him and I talked to him to find out everything that I had to do. And he told me. And he told me how to do my taxes and this and that and the other. So after a number of years of doing my taxes, I gave it to the tax man. They used to change every year, and it was getting to be too much. And I remember the tax guy asked me, well, who's been doing your taxes? I said, I have. He said, how many classes did you take? I was like, I didn't take any classes. And he was like, I took 5 and you didn't take any. I was like, no, I didn't.
So I think of businesses as typically run by men. Did you face any challenges over the years due to your race or gender when it came to owning a business?
No, I didn't. And I didn't plan to go into business. It was something that just happened. But when I was coming up, my parents had a business. And we were always taught that if you take from the community, you know, they're paying you, you should pay them back. You should always give back to your community. And people that help you, you should help them. And my mother, God bless her soul, she would talk to us all the time. Our favorite time to talk to her was Sunday morning when the first person that woke up would get into bed with her, and then the next person, then the next person. And we would just talk to her, and she would just talk to us, tell us what's right, what's wrong, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what's expected, and what is not. And she was so good at it that even now I'll go to do something else, like, no, mom wouldn't like that. No, we're not doing that. But she would teach us that, always give back. And I use that in my business, because she would say, your word is your bond. If your word isn't any good, you aren't. Watch your friends. Be careful. Get your education. She had thousands of those little things that roll through my head every day. And that's how I ran my business. And as far as color was concerned, there were some myths out there that most people say black people are always late. I make sure I'm never late, because I was a dressmaker. I am still the dressmaker for Fairhaven. And at one time, I would get there at 7:30, and I wouldn't leave until 1 o'clock. And I would see 6 people an hour. So I'd give everybody 10 minutes, but I figured out that if I drop off 2 things, when I get there, that gives me an extra 20 minutes, and the person that's going to take longer, I can give it to that person. And I had a gentleman that stopped me one day. He said, I would go there, and he'd be standing in the door doing like this. And he said, you're 1 second late. I said, do better next time.
Oh, wow. So I think I'm going to go back a little bit. I didn't put this question in to you before, but I'm curious about your experience in the FBI as a woman and as a person of color. I can't imagine there were many women in the FBI at that time, and I'm not sure about people of color. Maybe you can let me know let us know what that experience was like, and if because that sounds like breaking a barrier right there.
Well, you know, funny things happen to me all the time. After I quit that job that I hated so much, I went to work at Mondawmin Mall, and I got a job in the drugstore in the cosmetics counter. And back in the day, that was for being an African American, that was something different. And one day, this guy came through and asked me would I have lunch with him, and he was a white guy. And I'm like, excuse me? He said, I'd like to talk to you. I said, about what? And he said, oh, I'm sorry. He showed me his badge, and he said he was with the FBI, and would I have lunch with him? And he had some thoughts about some opportunities. So I had lunch with him, and he told me that they were looking for African American, because this was in '65, and they had passed the act in '64. So I filled out, he got the application and gave it to me. I almost fainted because the application was 20 pages long. And I filled out the application and I gave it to him, and I never heard anything for a long time. It was a couple of months. I said, well, I probably didn't make it. And then one day the FBI knocked on my door and told me he was an FBI agent. He needed to talk to me. It was about my application. And he said, there's a couple of people I can't find that you have down. And so I told him where they were or how to get in touch with them. And he said, don't worry, you have the job. I just have to finish finding everybody we need to talk to. And that's how I got the job. And then the only thing I knew about the FBI was what I saw on television. And then once I got, it was really interesting because I had no clerical experience. And once I got there, I went in as a grade 2. And if you had clerical experience, you went in as a grade 3. So I went in as grade 2, and 3 months later they called me in, and they said, we're going to promote you to a 3. I was like, oh, good. So I was a grade 3 for 7 months. Then they called me back in, and they said, we're going to move you up to a 4. And I was like, okay. And then you had to do your training and so on and so forth. And I finished my training, and I hadn't even received the 4 pay. And they called me in again. And they said, oh, we're going to send you up for your 5. I was like, okay. I wasn't unhappy. And I found out 2 days later, my supervisor said, you made it by 2 days. You can only get 2 grades a year. And you made it by 2 days. And I moved up to a grade 5. And that was just a little over a year after I'd been there. And one of the ladies that I work with, she told me one day, she said, before they start hiring African Americans, Mr. Hoover talked to everybody and told them that they were coming and there will be no problem, none at all. But I mean, there were issues because if you found out you were gay, you were fired. It was a lot of little things they would fire you, but it was a great experience. It really was. I was there 8.5 years.
So in your 8.5 years there, and after Mr. Hoover's talk with the white folks in the FBI, did you experience any racism or any sexism?
No, actually, a couple of the people that I worked with, there was a lot of African American and white. I still get cards from that I made really good friends with. And one girl was telling me, she said, Mr. Hoover said they had hired an African American girl, and they told them that she was coming in. And she was so light complexion, they didn't know she was black until 2 weeks after she'd gotten there. But I never felt anything. And I even, after a while, I got an incentive award for the work that I was doing. And that's how also I got back into sewing, because a lot of us at work sewed, and I would make a gown for somebody. We'd bring it in, try it on in the bathroom, and so on and so forth. It was like a little club, and they promoted that because we had a magazine called The Grapevine, so if you did something, you could get your picture in The Grapevine, and I did that. But working for the Bureau was a wonderful experience.
And I certainly don't know many people who have worked for the FBI. That seems like that's breaking barriers right there, is to be able to move up in the FBI so quickly. For folks listening, can you explain what grade 5 is? I'm not familiar with grade 5.
A grade 5?
Is that what, yeah.
Well, in the Bureau at the time I was there, you can go from a grade 5 up to a grade 14. And generally an agent, if you're going to be an agent, you start at a grade 14 or 10 or 11 or something like that. And when I worked there, in the FBI, every law has a department. And I was very fortunate because I was in Division 4, which was Files and Communication, and we didn't have computers in that day. We were searching and filing and so on and so forth. And I was calculating to get 2 raises a year, because you got a within grade raise, and you can go like 2 years, they give you a step, and then it's 2 years before you get another step. It's sort of like the school system. And right before I left, I had the opportunity to go from a grade 6 up to a grade 14, because they were opening a new section. And I was like, I was pregnant or something, not coming back.
So you could have gone on and on and on in the FBI. So you had said earlier about how your mom taught you that to give back to the community, and you've spent a lifetime doing that. You've done all sorts of things. You're the chair of Human Relations Commission. You've served on the Board of Education. You're a founding member of Carroll Citizens for Racial Equality. So what kind of challenges were you presented as a Board of Education member? So I know were there women on the Board of Education at that time? Were you the only person of color? What kind of challenges and barriers may you have broken from your
Well, that's another thing that happened. It's just like John Lewis said, if you see something that you don't think is right, speak up. And I had been involved with the school system for many years. When Paris Glendinning mandated multicultural education for the Board of Ed, I got a letter from Dr. Lockhart who asked me to be a part of that. And when I got the letter, I was like, why is he picking on me? Because of what happened to me in my school and how I was treated, I always had my eye on what was going on in the school. And I sent my kids to private school. They went to Carroll County Public School for kindergarten. And at the time, they were just mandating kindergarten. And they had that open space, and I was thinking, never, it's not going to work. So we put my kids went to private school. But I got involved with the multicultural education, and you could see the need. And we did the first 5 years, and we wrote the second 5 years. And I'll tell you, that's one of the hardest things that I'd ever done. And I was just happy that it was happening, because this is what we need in our schools. And then I was part of the multicultural education, which I still am, the council. And Dr. Eckers asked me, would I be interested to be on the school board? I'd only seen the school board one time, and that was when we presented our program to them, and they told us, I don't know why you're so proud of yourself, you need to go back and start all over again. I was like, what? All that work we did. I was done with the school board then. That was the only time I'd met anybody on the school board, and my thoughts of what the school board was like was totally different. And I was like, no, I can't do that. And then he called me up one day and he said, Virginia, in the paper today it says I'm not going to fill this position, but if you agree to take it, and then I will put your name in. But other than that, I wouldn't fill it. So I said, well, okay, 7 months, I can do that. And then when I joined, I was like, oh, okay. And I found I really enjoyed the work. And then just to see what the kids are doing in school, and to see how many opportunities are out there, and just to see what could be. You know, if you just take a look at what could be and what's there for these kids, and they don't realize what opportunities they have. And you know, it's a passion, because I see them like I see my kids. I wanted every opportunity for them. And that's why I was on the board, and I'm still interested in why I'm running for the board, because there's so many opportunities. And you know, when you sit on a dais and you look out and you're talking, and I would think it really would be nice if I just had one eye I could catch to know that, let them know that I understand, or just something. But you know, it's just the passion. And one thing about me, if I'm not passionate about it, I'm nowhere near it. If I don't believe in it, I'm gone. I just I can't fake it. If I don't like it, it's just that I don't like it. I'm not here. But it was so many opportunities, and I think I learned more than anybody else because I had no idea about how much work it is to carry a school system. They have all those employees. They have to think about buses. They have to think about trash cans, food, electricity, everything. And people say, "How do you do it?" I said, "I treat it as if I'm the mother. In a household, you want these things, but if you don't have the money, you can't have them. And you make up things, and you value. My mother used to always say, money don't buy value. You can't buy value with money. So you stretch it, because she could get blood out of a dime. She could."
Since we're talking a little bit about campaigning and politics, in some respects, this is the 100th year anniversary of the women's right to vote. But voting hasn't always been open for everyone, and it's been difficult, and there's a lot of barriers placed against people who are marginalized. Did you or your family experience any barriers to voting or challenges?
Well, I did. When I learned about voting and how long it took for the women to get the votes, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I did not know that. So I always voted. I never missed to vote because it's a priority. And I remember when Kwesi Mfume ran in Baltimore, and he was in my district. And when I went to vote for him, I couldn't get the machine to vote for him. I couldn't, and I tried, I almost broke the machine because it would not vote for him. And so after that, I am determined to vote and know the people that I'm voting for. I want to see them, I want to hear them talk, I want to be able to recognize them, because it is so important. Because I know in early days, I'm like, "Well, that name looks good, I'll vote for him." I'll never do that. I need to know who you are and what you stand for. It is that important.
So it sounds like when a barrier is placed or a challenge, you speak up.
Yes. And it's not always that too, because we were taught people are people. And I remember when I graduated from high school, and I declared right after my graduation, from this day forward, the only opinion I really care about is mine, about me. It's my opinion of me. And then my mother is always behind that. But, I didn't let people steer me into things. And if I could help somebody with something, I would. And I'd heard about racism because when I was about 12, I lived in a totally Catholic area. And I was going to my girlfriend's house, and I'm walking down the street, and these nice two white Catholic boys came down with their blue blazers and ties and shirt and khakis. And there was a tree there, and the street narrowed. So I said, said to myself, I'm just going to walk around them. And as I walked around them, they called me the N-word. And they said, "You better had moved," and the one spit on me. And I was like, "I'm not taking this, no way." And I was really angry. And the next day I was going down the street, there was two white women coming up the street. I said, "I'm not moving." And I walked between them, and I hit them with my elbow. And I felt like I was about a millimeter. I was like, "Mom would kill me. This is not right. You know it's not right." I had to go home and sit down and talk to myself and says, those two women had nothing to do with those two guys. Now you're going to have to answer for bumping those two women because I didn't have the right to do that. I really didn't. And as I thought about it and I understood what people meant when it says that people can change you, make you do things, you out of anger, and you can't do that. And I remember, and after that day, I said, I would never do that, never treat anybody like that. Because I know if I see a sad face, I always smile. And I love to do it with the little kids because they just stare at you, and then the next thing you know, they're smiling. And I also read a book one time with Cornel West in it, and he said, if there is God in you, everywhere you go, you should leave a little bit of heaven. And I was thinking, the cheapest one I can think of is a good smile. If you give a good smile, that should be a little bit of heaven. And those are the kind of rules that, that I was taught and stick by.
All right, so here's one. Sometimes barriers are placed in front of us from outside forces, but sometimes we put barriers in front of ourselves. Sometimes we don't know why we do that. It might be because of societal bias, internalized. What, if any, internal barriers or challenges have you had to face from within yourself?
Well, some of the barriers sometimes come as close to you as some family members that tell you you can't do this and you can't do that. But then I always remember what my father said, keep trying. And my mother told me one time, she said, Virginia, it says, if you're going through a door and somebody's coming out and they tell you it's locked, she said, try the door anyway. It may be locked for them, but it may not be locked for you. And if you can't get in that way, sometimes it's okay to go through the back door. Because that way, as long as you get where you need to go, you can get there. And because I have a whole set of rules. When my daughter was born, and they brought her to me, and I was like, I'm a mother, oh Lord, what am I gonna do? And I sat there and made a whole bunch of rules. And I was like, and when she graduates from college, she has to do this and this and that and the other. And I kept that list in my head, and then I just checked them off as time went by. And when something is bothering me, I know there's a solution to it. And if I can't have the solution, then sometime you have to just let it go. And it's about the prayer that I prayed every night, that God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can. That's my prayer every day. And I figure that's the best I can do. And when I have challenges, real huge challenges, I go, okay, Lord, this one's on you. Because we used to sing this song in church that said, take everything to God in prayer. And I remember going to find out the result of my cancer test. And I was like, okay, I can't handle this. This one's on you. You just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And those are the rules that I go by.
So it sounds like your family has given you a lot of internal strength and wisdom to overcome and face barriers and challenges, and your faith in God. So, are there any kind of, well, I guess I'll do this one. Is there any advice that you would give to someone who encounters the same barriers over and over again?
The advice I would give to anybody is, first, you have to learn to respect yourself. You can't expect people to respect you when you don't respect yourself. Get to know who you are, because some of us are so great and have so many potentials, and we just let other people just rip it away from us. We can have them in our hand, and we allow other people to take it from us. Just believe in yourself and believe. And you know, I don't consider myself a religious person, but I am a spiritual person, and I believe that there is a universe, and I call it the law of the universe. I don't have to get even with you because the universe is going to take care of that. You know, I just want to be there to watch it. But I truly believe that. And if you believe in you, people will see who you are. When you believe in something yourself, it resonates. And I only say that because of all the accolations I've gotten. I'm always shocked. I was like, oh, I really didn't do anything, you know. But it is. It means a lot to people, and it's just little things. Because last summer I was critically ill. My chances of survival was 20%. And my kids told me after that. She said, "We were so sick of people telling us what you meant to them. And we wanted to say, get out of our faces, this is our mother." She said, but they kept saying how special you were, and you did this and you did that. I would have never guessed that. But it's not about, it's about me giving to other people. Because I remember when I was younger, and we lived on the second and third floor, and there's an apartment downstairs from us, and my mother called me to the window one day, and she said, "Virginia, look at this lady downstairs. She just moved in." And she was an elderly lady. And she said, "So when I send you to the store to get something, go down and ask her if she needs something." Because she would always say to us, "Always respect your elders." She said, "I know sometimes they're wrong, but just respect them because the fact that they're older, they deserve the respect." Always do that. And so I would go down there. That poor lady had worked me to death. But my mother said, "You cannot take any money. You cannot take money. But help her." And these are the rules that I stick by. I found life is so much easier when you have what you think is right.
You're very humble.
But
Because you're very humble. So many people in the community think you are a barrier breaker, but it sounds like you have trouble seeing that you are a barrier breaker. You're certainly a leader in the community and well loved. We have a lot of young folks in our community and in the education system that you spoke of earlier. What advice, and it may be the same advice you already talked about, but what advice would you give to young women today, especially young Black women?
oh my God, please get your education. Get as much education as you possibly can do. And the first gift that you should give yourself, get a passport. Leave this country. Because, you know, when my daughter graduated from high school, I said to her, "Tia, this is the best summer of your life, and I'm going to give it to you. You don't have to work or anything." I said, "But you got to get a passport and leave this country." So she went to Hawaii. And she came back, "How was that, Mom?" I said, "You were still in the country. You didn't go anywhere." So she went to, she and her boyfriend went to China. And then she came back and she said, "Now I understand what you were saying." It's because when you leave living in this country, you're taking it for granted. When you leave this country and you go to another country and you see how people live and you see what their everyday is, when you get home, you have great respect for your country. We're not perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but we as a people can change it. we can. But respect you. Number one, please respect yourself. Don't let these people out here telling you all kinds of stuff, taking these drugs. It does not help. It really does not help you. And that was one of the things I wanted to teach my daughters. I listened to what was going on with other people and other parents, and I would see how boys were trying to manipulate girls and with gadgets. So I made sure by the time my girls were 21, they had diamonds. They were on the necks or the ears, but they had them because I wanted to know, want them to know what giving a gift was like. You give a gift for love. You don't give it to get something back. And you don't care what they do with it, but they have it. And I think I always thought that was the most important thing. Respect yourself, and the opportunities are just endless. Actually, just amazing. And my kids used to say, Mom, you give a lot of Christmas gifts, but you don't get any back. I was like, sometimes it's good not to get Christmas gifts all the time. And it's more fun to give them than to get them. And they truly understand that. I am so proud of my girls. I don't know what to do. And there's only 3 people in this whole world that I really care about that opinion. And that is Simon, Benjamin, and Campbell West, my grandkids. Their opinion of me is very important to me. Those are the only 3 opinions I care about.